After finalising the signing of Marco Palestra from Cagliari, Chelsea are moving in on their next target, Crystal Palace centre-back Maxence Lacroix. In and around all of that news is also a lot of speculation about Trevoh Chalobah potentially leaving the club, mostly being linked with Como, but also credited with interest from Inter Milan and Juventus. Chalobah has had 18 months in the first team to try and cement a first-team spot, but seemingly is still not 100% rated by Blueco or incoming manager Xabi Alonso. So if Trevoh Chalobah were allowed to leave and Maxence Lacroix were to come in, would we actually be getting an upgrade on our Chelsea Academy boy? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And today we're going to do a statistical comparison between Maxence Lacroix and Trevoh Chalobah. Now look, I'll be sad to see Chalobah go, but at the end of the day, I've kind of said it a load of times on my channel already. If he was willing and happy to stick around and be a backup and fight for his place, I'd love to keep him. But as an academy boy, a Chelsea player who's given everything for the club, if he's not happy to do that and we get another centre-back that does take over that position, I will wish him all of the best, and I don't think it's a terrible idea for him to move on. I know a lot of you guys will be like, why aren't we looking at selling Axel Disasi, Benoit Badiashile, Wesley Fofana? It's the nuance of the situation, and largely it comes down to Trevoh Chalobah obviously being an academy player, which means all of his profit will be book profit. If we manage to sell Trevoh Chalobah for 30 to 40 mil, that is probably in and around the same profit that we would make for selling Axel Disasi, Badiashile and Fofana potentially combined. So with all that said and done, let's have a little look at Maxence Lacroix versus Trevoh Chalobah to see if we're getting an upgrade in our defence. So first things first, we'll look at the profiles of the players and their heat maps. Both players are 26 years old, so the instant good thing about that is that if we do bring in Maxence Lacroix, we're not necessarily losing the age and experience in that sense, and we're not just replacing him with a 21-year-old who's got potential. Both players played centre-back. Trevoh Chalobah has depth in a few other positions over the years, playing at right-back a little bit, but ultimately it's not really his game, and it's fair to say that both defenders are considered to be centre-backs before anything else. And both players are right-footed, and that leads me neatly into the heat maps. Now, obviously, Maxence Lacroix on the left, Trevoh Chalobah on the right. So the instant thing that you can see here is Maxence Lacroix is not doing much else other than defending. Like, that is literally his whole thing. He's really in the centre, a little bit more weighted towards the right in the grand scheme of things than he is the left, but he's not getting out on the byline. He's very rarely getting past the midfield line, whereas you can see with Trevoh Chalobah, he's really pushing up, he's getting involved in attacks. And the other thing that you can see that's interesting here is Maxence Lacroix is much more of a box presence than Trevoh Chalobah is as well. So the thing with Trevoh Chalobah is he played a lot of different positions across the, I say a lot of different positions, like up to 3 different positions across the back line. He would often feature on right centre-back or left centre-back, depending on whether it's a 3 or a 4, but he was comfortable on either side. By the looks of things from here, you would argue that Maxence Lacroix looks like a right-sided centre-back. You can even see in the defending from his side of the box, he's also defending more on that right side. Generally, he's a much more right-sided defender, whereas you can actually see Trevoh Chalobah generally is getting out more to the left and a lot more advanced as well. Maxence Lacroix looks like he's only concerned with defending the defensive half of the box. So it's a small difference, but ultimately it is interesting because it shows you that Trevoh Chalobah is arguably more versatile, right? Because he's getting up the byline a little bit, he's spreading out a lot more, he's playing on the left, he's playing on the right, he's getting into midfield a lot more as well. But ultimately, with Levi Colwill back in tow to be getting forward and making those passes, what we really need is a defender who puts defending first, and just looking at the heat maps, it seems that might be Maxence Lacroix's game. And guys, if you've made it this far into today's episode of the Stamford Sync, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so with the profile of the players out of the way, let's get into the stats. Now, caveat, all of these stats are from the Premier League. Now, sometimes when I do these comparisons, we're getting players from other leagues. So recently I did Marco Palestra and Malagusto, and there's a lot more interpreting to be done, right? Because you're like, okay, cool, Marco Palestra looks wicked in Serie A, but does it translate to the Premier League? That will always remain a question until we see him on the pitch. But in this case, we're talking about 2 centre-backs from the same leagues, and they both play in London. Not that that makes any difference at all, but these are the league-only stats, the Premier League only stats from Maxence Lacroix and Trevoh Chalobah, so let's get into it. Alright, starting with games played. So Maxence Lacroix played 35 games for Crystal Palace last season, and Trevoh Chalobah played 34 for Chelsea. But you can instantly see when we move on, albeit only 1 game different, Maxence Lacroix played more minutes and got more starts with 35 to 31. So Trevoh Chalobah was subbed on 3 times essentially, but obviously it showed, like, we had so many centre-back pairings last season. It was wild. And Trevoh Chalobah was normally the guy, to be honest. Trevoh Chalobah I think played the most Premier League, probably the most games out of any of our centre-backs across all of the season. But there was always questions being asked, wasn't there? Who do we partner with? Trevor Chalobah, because ultimately we were missing Levi Colwill. But it looks like if we do get a Maxence Lacroix, because of him favouring the right side and being an astute defender, there's going to be a lot less questions being asked about who our starting partnership is. And that already is so important, because I think it was nine centre-back partnerships last year. It might even be more than that, to be honest, because we brought in Mamadou Sarr, so it could be 10, but that needs to stop. So goals and assists, they're centre-back, so it's not exactly super important, but it does make for interesting reading anyway. Maxence Lacroix only scored 1 goal for Crystal Palace last season. Trevor Chalobah scored 3 goals in the Premier League for us, so that were, and some of those were important goals as well. Ultimately, we didn't finish very well, do you know what I mean? But at the same time, Trevor Chalobah, to his credit, was able to arrive with a goal in important moments as and when needed, but that doesn't seem to be a huge part of Maxence Lacroix's game, which is interesting when you consider the fact, if we think about the heat maps, Maxence Lacroix spent a lot more time in the opposition's box, you know, for corners and stuff, and then Trevor Chalobah did. So, interesting one there. It looks like Maxence Lacroix is getting himself into those positions more, but Trev, a little bit more clinical. What I do think is interesting here is the assist numbers, right? Because Maxence Lacroix got 2 assists for Crystal Palace last season, with Trevor Chalobah getting none. And that's going to be even crazier. Not crazy, but when we move into the passing stats in a minute, Trevor Chalobah's passing stats were phenomenal for Chelsea last season, and Maxence Lacroix not so much. So the fact that Maxence Lacroix is getting assists in the Premier League, despite not being the archetypal passing centre-back, is a good sign. So let's have a little look at those passing stats, shall we? And this is much more indicative of the type of games played, but it's the accuracy that's really important. So Maxence Lacroix attempted 1,654 passes in the Premier League last season. Trevor Chalobah, 2,283. So what that tells you already is the styles of the teams were different. Oliver Glasner was not putting together a possession-based team in Crystal Palace. They were more transitional. And Trevor Chalobah was a huge part of our passing game. There's some crazy stat, isn't there? I'm not even sure what the actual percentage is, but centre-backs now spend more time on the ball than anyone. So it makes sense that in a possession-based team, someone like Trevor Chalobah is getting on the ball so much. That's an outrageous amount of passes, but in itself, it only indicates the different styles of the teams that they were in. But moving on to the accuracy is where things get more interesting. So Maxence Lacroix, 88.15% passing accuracy. Now that is less than Trevor Chalobah's 93.04% passing accuracy that he managed in the Premier League last season, with 600 more passes as well. Like, that's incredible from Trevor Chalobah. You can understand instantly why a team like Como might be interested in him, because Cesc Fabregas also likes to play possession-based football, and he will like his centre-backs to be good passers as well. If he does go to Como, 100% they'll be getting that. We can wax lyrical about Trevor Chalobah's passing accuracy all day, and even though he was in front of Maxence Lacroix, 88% passing accuracy is awesome. That's really, really good. Like, anything 85 to 90 is in the upper echelons of good passes, right? So, albeit making a lot less passes, and albeit a lesser passing percent accuracy than Trevor Chalobah had, Maxence Lacroix has a good passing accuracy. 88% is nothing to be sniffed at all. So yes, we do lose a little bit more of that accuracy with Trevor Chalobah, but the truth is, with Levi Colwill in the team, that's not going to be as much of Maxence Lacroix's game. So look, phenomenal stats from Trev there, like absolutely brilliant. Like, he was kind of the de facto replacement for Levi Colwill in terms of being the most used centre-back that we had, and obviously a lot of the passing was going through him, and he did a really good job at it. But like I say, Maxence Lacroix's passing accuracy is absolutely not to be sniffed at, and like I say, when you partner him with a Levi Colwill, who is going to be expected to be the passing centre-back, and he focuses on defending, you know that if he does get the ball, 88% of the time, his short passes are going to meet their target, and that's phenomenal. So we move on to long balls, right? Long passes attempted, 171 long passes attempted from Maxence Lacroix, 125 from Trevor Chalobah. So again, this is like largely indicative of the games that they played, I guess. With a more transitional team, you would expect Maxence Lacroix to be making more long balls, right? But then we get into the accuracy as well, and it's really impressive. Maxence Lacroix's long ball accuracy was 49.12% to Trevor Chalobah's 40 on the dot. So this is also a good thing, to be honest, because one of the things, I've talked about this a couple of times, one of the things about having a passing goalkeeper, right? You want a keeper that can play out from the back and he can pass it short to your centre-backs. You want a Mike Penders, for instance, if that's who we're going to go with, or a Rob Sanchez, but hopefully not, to pass the ball up to a Levi Colwill or a Maxence Lacroix, and if they make a long ball, they're already further up the pitch, which means their ball is likely to reach its intended target in a better attacking position. So it is a big difference as well, like a basically 50%, like 1 in 2 of Maxence Lacroix's long balls are reaching their target. That's really, really good. And a little bit less for Trevor Chalobah, which still isn't bad, but at the end of the day, if his long passing is good, that's awesome. Like, that's really, really good, because we know that Levi Colwill is going to be able to pick up the slack in the short passing, and obviously is a good long passer as well. But Lacroix being a good long passer is an excellent part of his game. So next up, we move to through balls. Only 1 from Maxence Lacroix and 4 from Trevor Chalobah, and that makes sense when you consider Trevor Chalobah's game was more based around the kind of short passing thing as well. It's not, and even when you look at their heat maps, right? If you think about the heat maps, Maxence Lacroix was not very often getting past the halfway line. Trevor Chalobah spent a lot more time getting past the halfway line, so would have been looking to do things like make through balls to try and put people on attacks. Obviously not very often, because that's 4 in 34 games and 31 starts. But only 1 from Maxence Lacroix just shows you he wasn't being asked to do that at all. But again, contextually, it's all about Levi Colwill at this point, isn't it? Because we know that Levi Colwill's good at a line-splitting pass and that he's good at a through ball. So it's not particularly a worry there, albeit it is something awesome from Trev's side. And again, it makes sense why Como are looking at him, because he's got all of these kind of abilities already when it comes to passing, which is such a huge part of Cesc Fabregas' game as well as ours. But it's starting to look like with Maxence Lacroix, that's not necessarily what we're looking for in Levi Colwill's partner. So, passing stats, Trevor Chalobah ostensibly comes out on top in the short passing game, right? But I would maybe hazard a guess that Levi Colwill's short passing stats are probably better than Trevor Chalobah's. And that is really interesting, isn't it? Because it's not a like-for-like replacement. If we sell Trevor Chalobah and bring in Maxence Lacroix, we're not looking to replace Trevor Chalobah's output. We're looking for that partner to Levi Colwill. So even the stats kind of already tell that story. But passing is all fine and good. We're looking for a defender. So can he actually defend? Let's have a look. So Maxence Lacroix overall contested 333 duels in the Premier League last season to Trevor Chalobah's 227. So basically, I was at 106 more duels contested, which instantly tells you, I mean, you can see all the green on this side already. So, you know, spoiler alert, like defending seems to be Lacroix's game. But even just from the initial one, or, you know, combined all different types of duels contested, 333. For Maxence Lacroix to 227 from Trevor Chalobah. Tackles made 60 from Maxence Lacroix, 35 from Trevor Chalobah. So again, it just keeps on telling this story, doesn't it? Fouls won, 19 for Maxence Lacroix, 18 for Trevor Chalobah. So infinitesimal difference there. That's not like, it is better, but it's not such a difference that you can really talk about the style of play in that respect. Fouls, 34 fouls from Maxence Lacroix, only 20 from Trevor Chalobah. Now that again makes sense, because if you're contesting 100 more duels and you're making 15 more fouls, then that's, you know, it kind of makes sense. It's not, again, not a stick to beat either of them with. It's very much a case of Maxence Lacroix is getting more involved in the defending side and he's making more challenges and he's contesting more duels. Ergo, it is more likely that he's going to get more fouls against him. But at the same time, it does show that Trevor is a tidy footballer, and we do like that. Aerial duels contested, 193 for Maxence Lacroix, which makes sense because he spent a lot more time in defending our box than Trevor Chalobah did. You can see that in the heat maps. And aerial duels contested for Trevor Chalobah, 134. So again, a significant difference there, and just pushes Maxence Lacroix forward as this guy is here to defend. And then we look at the success of those aerial duels, 61.66% from Maxence Lacroix and 55.97% from Trevor Chalobah. So albeit, and normally this goes the other way, right? Like I said, with the duels and the fouls and stuff, normally the more you make, the lesser your percent is. So the fact that Maxence Lacroix is able to make 60 more aerial duels, or contest 60 more aerial duels than Trevor Chalobah in a season, but also keep his percentage higher, is really, really impressive. That essentially means that Maxence Lacroix is winning around 2 of 3 aerial duels, which is great because we have conceded so many set pieces, man. And some of our box defending has been calamitous for the last season. So to have someone like Maxence Lacroix come in who's really, really confident at all of these things, the duels contested, the tackles, the aerial duels, that's all fantastic. So let's carry on with the next set of defensive stats. Ground duels contested. This is all in the duels contested, so we already know that overall Maxence Lacroix contested more duels than Trevor Chalobah by 100, and these are kind of the breakdowns of them. Maxence Lacroix contested 140 ground duels across the season. Trevor Chalobah only 93. So, again, just selling that story, isn't it? Like I say, the stats are telling the story that Maxence Lacroix is a defender's defender, and Trevor Chalobah is not so much because his passing stats were so good. His heat map showed that he was often getting higher than the halfway line. Ground duel success is interesting, though. Maxence Lacroix actually loses out on this one, 60.71%, but that still means 2 of 3 of his ground duels he's winning, and Trevor Chalobah 63.44. So, albeit he was contesting less, Trevor Chalobah did a really good job at also winning in and around 2 out of 3 of his ground duels. But ultimately, ultimately per capita, Maxence Lacroix will come out on top in that one. Clearances, and mate, this is a really important one, I think. So 252 clearances from Maxence Lacroix and 178 from Trevor Chalobah. Bearing in mind with all of these stats, they played a very, very similar amount of games with Maxence Lacroix just coming out on top. So it's not like we're looking at, you know, a huge significant difference in time. There is a bit because obviously Trevor Chalobah was subbed on a few times as well, but again, the clearances is another one that shows you that Maxence Lacroix is in the box, he's winning aerial duels, and he's making clearances by a clear, significant amount more than Trevor Chalobah was as well, which again just feels like something we've been missing for a while, doesn't it? A proper defender to defend things. It's all fine and good having players that are versatile, that can get forward, that can pass really well, and this and that and the other. But what I feel like we've been missing for a long time is just a proper, robust, astute defender. And this is starting to look like Maxence Lacroix is that guy. Interceptions, 45 interceptions for Trevor Chalobah's 35. So not a huge amount of difference there, but still a good one for Maxence Lacroix. And blocked shots, 18-17. So look, and again, that's really, really close. So Trevor Chalobah was doing well in that respect in the grand scheme of things. Maxence Lacroix only just coming out in front of him. So from the stats that we've looked at so far, the most important ones obviously are the passing and the defending in the grand scheme of things, based on the fact that we're a possession style team. What we are seeing is Trevor Chalobah was kind of that Levi Colwill replacement for last season, and he was tasked with a lot of the short passing, the through balls, and, you know, knitting play together and kind of maintaining and recycling possession. Maxence Lacroix is not that guy. So like I said it earlier, but I'll say it again, we're not bringing in Maxence Lacroix to replace Trevor Chalobah's profile. Trevor Chalobah was actually used to replace Levi Colwill's profile, but Levi Colwill already has Levi Colwill's profile. So getting a Maxence Lacroix in, whose defending stats are phenomenal. Like, Trevor Chalobah did a reasonably good job, but at the end of the day, this is the reason why we're not looking to keep him, right? Because he's worth so much more money. There's other centre-backs in the squad, potentially the likes of Josh Achiampong, Mamadou Sarr, that we can still need to see if they can keep up that, you know, level of passing. And what it wouldn't be fair to do for Trevor Chalobah is to say, you're Levi Colwill's backup for the season, so when Levi Colwill was unavailable to play, you will get minutes. Trevor Chalobah is a good Premier League defender, and evidently for a team like Como in Italy, who play a very heavily possession-based game, he might be the perfect guy for them. Right, we'll just have a little look at some of the last mop-up stats. So 4 yellow cards for Maxence Lacroix last season to Trevor Chalobah's 3. Not ideal. 1 red card apiece. So it's only one different at the end of the day. Like, they've both got sent off. We need to stop getting players sent off. Like, that's really, really important. But kind of like I mentioned before, with Maxence Lacroix being such a defence-first defender, he's making a huge amount more challenges. He's getting into positions where he's more likely to foul someone. That does kind of make sense. So the fact that it's only 1 more yellow card, I guess, is something in itself there. But still, the red cards are something we need to keep an eye on. And then we look at ball recoveries and possession lost. 94 ball recoveries for Maxence Lacroix and 119 for Trevor Chalobah. Possession lost 233 times for Maxence Lacroix and only 186 for Trevor Chalobah. So in terms of the ball recoveries, that makes more sense because Trevor Chalobah was getting up into the midfield more, right? So he was, you know, likely to have been picking up that ball a bit more. The possession lost thing, though, that's the only one where it's not a huge, I mean, it's like 50, to be fair. It's like 50 times if you think that's nearly 1.5 times more than Trevor Chalobah per game in the Premier League, isn't it, at the end of the day? So hopefully Maxence Lacroix isn't getting into too many positions where he's able to lose possession. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's another kind of possession stat, which is good if you think about it in terms of possession lost. Like, Trevor Chalobah is losing possession less often as that passing centre-back, which is another reason that I think he would do well in that Como team. So, guys, that's it. That's the statistical comparison between Maxence Lacroix and Trevor Chalobah. So the thing about Maxence Lacroix, it's not nailed on. Like, as much as I would love it to be, and it feels like it because the Palestra thing happened so quickly, we are not negotiating at the moment. I think it's like the conversations are being had. We haven't put any bids in yet. I think it might be complicated, and maybe this is a hot take, but I think it might be complicated because the discussion is maybe also being had about Adam Wharton at the same time, and that might make things take a little bit longer. Also, Maxence Lacroix is with France in the World Cup at the moment, and I did see something today on Twitter saying that potentially the Lacroix deal is not going to be finalised until Lacroix comes back from the World Cup. So look, Palestra was available. Xabi Alonso was able to give him the call, and we were, you know, he was able to fly over for his medical, and everything was gravy. So we were able to just go out and get that done. Maxence Lacroix, a little bit more complicated because he's at the World Cup, because also it probably relies on the Trevor Chalobah sale, because Maxence Lacroix is potentially going to cost us between 40 and 50 million pounds, which I'm not going to lie is actually pretty good for a defender of that stature. But either way, it might not happen immediately. Now, it's really difficult to say at the moment, isn't it? With Chelsea's stealth window, as I've dubbed it over the last couple of videos, it could just happen. I'm not 100% sure. We've seen Marc Cucurella sign for Real Madrid while he's away at the World Cup, so it's not impossible that something like that happens. But if Maxence Lacroix doesn't want to get this deal done until he finishes the World Cup. Ultimately, that's up to him. You know, as much as Marco Correa was saying, I don't want to hear about it, I want to focus on the World Cup or whatever, the offer came in, he was happy to sign it, and, you know, it's all down to the player in that respect. So, like I say, if Lacroix doesn't want to get this deal done until after the World Cup, then fair enough, that's totally up to him. So that's maybe, even though we've started talking to Crystal Palace about it now, potentially that's the reason why it's not heating up quite as quickly as the Palestra thing did. And like I said, maybe it's a bit tinfoil hatty, but I have the distinct feeling that we might be talking about Adam Wharton at the same time, and maybe the noise about us talking to Crystal Palace for Lacroix is a bit of a smokescreen to help us keep that under wraps. So guys, let me know what you think. I will be sad to see Trevor Chalobah go. Look, even if we don't get Lacroix, if we end up going in for someone else, because there are 3 or 4 targets, this is the truth as well. Lacroix is our number 1 target, and I can't really see any reason why we wouldn't get him. It's not an absolutely crazy price. He's a good Premier League defender. He's a good age. He's won trophies with Crystal Palace in the last few seasons. It's the right opportunity for him to make the step up to a bigger team, and it does all just seem to make sense to me, to be honest. But, you know, football's football at the end of the day, so, you know, and we have other targets for a reason. So there's a small opportunity and a small chance that it might not happen. But if it does, would you be happy with Maxence Lacroix over Trevor Chalobah? Like I say, for me, albeit it's kind of looks like one in, one out, it's not so much replacing Trevor Chalobah with Maxence Lacroix as we're actually replacing Trevor Chalobah with Levi Colwill, and Lacroix is coming in for the position that we kind of have nobody for, which is be a good defender. Nice one, guys. I'm going to wrap the video up there. Thank you very much for sticking around with me until the end if you did, and I will catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.